The Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions will please come to order. Thanks to our nominees for being here. If confirmed, you'll be crucial in advancing President Trump's agenda, improving the lives of all Americans, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. If confirmed as Deputy Secretary of Education, Dr. Schwinn will play an integral role in reforming a department that has lost its purpose. Its bureaucracy and red tape have stood in the way of student success. Dr. Schwinn has a strong record of improving education systems, including as Tennessee Commissioner of Education and Chief Deputy Commissioner of Education in Texas. She tells me that she personally met with President Trump to discuss these issues. This experience will be vital as the Trump administration looks to return power over education to states and ensure that all students have the opportunity to succeed. The committee will also hear from Ms. Richey, nominated for Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the Department of Education. Ms. Richey brings extensive experience from previous administrations and state agencies addressing discriminatory practices in K-12 schools and universities nationwide. This experience is especially important as the administration works to address troubling anti-Semitism on college campuses. Next, the committee is considering Mr. Aronowitz, nominated to lead the Employee Benefits Security Administration at the Department of Labor. If confirmed, Mr. Aronowitz committed to improving health and retirement benefits for workers, including independent contractors. His decades of legal experience and knowledge of ERISA will be an asset to this mission. Lastly, the committee will hear from Mr. Keeling, nominated to head the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, better known as OSHA. Mr. Keeling spent 30 years advocating for worker safety in the private sector and has strong support from businesses and from labor unions. If confirmed, he committed to ensuring OSHA regulations reflect what is best for workers, not biased towards one party over the other. Thank you again to all our witnesses for appearing before the committee. And with that, I recognize Senator Baldwin for her opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, and thank you to our nominees for being here today. Mr. Chairman, we are holding this hearing today as the Trump administration makes daily attacks on public education, worker safety, and retirement security. The nominees before us today will undoubtedly be tasked with carrying out the administration's dangerous agenda to remove worker safety protections, rescind rules that protect retirees and those who are nearing retirement, dismantle the entire Department of Education, and undercut civil rights protections for historically marginalized groups. The nominees themselves may have different goals if they are confirmed, but the actions taken by the Trump administration so far and the budget requests for the Department of Education and Labor submitted to Congress make clear exactly what they will be instructed to do in their roles. I'm deeply concerned by the administration's approach at the Department of Labor. This administration claims to be pro-worker, but their actions demonstrate the opposite. They are paying lip service to hardworking Americans while enacting an agenda to decimate their rights, protections, and hard-earned benefits. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, is predicting it will inspect almost 10,000 fewer workplaces next year than it inspected in 2024 if the administration's budget cuts were fully enacted. Reducing the number of inspections leads to more unsafe environments, more injuries, and more families facing the uncertainty that comes from losing hours at a job or dealing with a work injury. Mr. Keeling is being nominated to be at the helm of OSHA as this happens. The Employee Benefits Security Administration, or EBSA, has already lost roughly 30% of its staff since the beginning of 2025, 30%, with those losses concentrated in the Enforcement Division, the office that protects consumers as they navigate health and retirement plans. EBSA oversees private retirement plans, health plans, and other benefits, which collectively hold about $14 trillion in assets. These plans cover 156 million workers, retirees, and their dependents. Slashing the staff who ensure these plans are following the law and are working in consumers' best interests helps no one except the corporations who can more easily cut corners, harming workers and retirees. Mr. Aronowitz has been nominated to lead a much diminished EBSA. The Trump administration attacks on the Department of Education began during his first week in office. The Trump administration has laid off nearly half of the staff at the Department of Education, leading to more delays and inefficiencies that are directly harming students and schools. The administration has also terminated funding that Congress appropriated for programs intended to benefit students, resources that were already in use in communities in Wisconsin and elsewhere, pulling the rug out from plans to use that money for summer learning, after-school tutoring, and teacher training. Earlier this week, I pushed Secretary McMahon on her decision to discontinue grants to expand access to mental health care for students, which Congress authorized and funded on a bipartisan basis. Ms. Schwinn, the nominee to be Deputy Secretary of Education, will be tasked with overseeing the Department of Education's implementation of federal education laws. And I expect these laws to be implemented as intended. Ms. Richey, the nominee to be Assistant Secretary of Education for Civil Rights, is nominated to lead an office that is currently engaged in a troubling trend of halting cases of discrimination based on race, gender, and disability, while opening a slew of what appear to be politically motivated investigations into schools, districts, and universities. Just as the Office of Civil Rights received its highest ever volume of complaints last year, the department closed 7 of its 12 regional offices and fired nearly 300 Office of Civil Rights staff this year. Investigators have seen their caseloads skyrocket from 42 cases per investigator to 115, making it difficult for those investigators to meaningfully investigate discrimination and to protect students' rights. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad we have the opportunity to hear from these nominees, but I think we should all be concerned that the administration's actions and budgets demonstrate how little care they have for doing right by these students, teachers, and workers and retirees.
Thank you. I will introduce each nominee just prior to he or she speaking. So I'll begin with Ms. Schwinn. We're joined today by Dr. Penny Schwinn, President Trump's nominee for Deputy Secretary of Education. If confirmed, Dr. Schwinn will help to lead the department as it works to deliver results for children and families and return authority over education back to the states. She previously served as Commissioner of Education in Texas, where she served as Chief Deputy Commissioner. She holds a PhD from Claremont Graduate School. I look forward to hearing from her today, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Schwinn.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, and members of the committee. It's an honor to appear before you as a nominee for Deputy Secretary of Education. I'm grateful for the support of my family, friends, and former colleagues. I want to take the opportunity to especially thank my 3 children, Ellie, Abby, and Jack, who couldn't be here today. My daughter is in the National Soccer Championship in St. Louis, so they are on their way there. She's a goalie. I'm a goalie mom. Toughest job.
And you're not there. I'm just saying, Mom, feel guilty.
Thank you for the mom guilt. Yes, I'm not there, but I will be flying there as soon as possible. I also want to thank my family, the Hemian gang back in Gilroy, California, and most importantly, DC, and my mom, who is behind me right now and is behind me for 42 years, a classroom teacher, and the reason that I am here today. From the moment I got to speak with each of them in our in-person interviews, I've been continually grateful to Donald J. Trump and Secretary McMahon for the confidence they've placed in me and for the ambitious vision they are casting for the future of America's education system. Education is foundational to our nation's success, economically, socially, and strategically. It is also deeply personal. I come from a family of teachers, and for us, education isn't just a profession, it's a calling. I began as a high school teacher and have served as a charter school founder, an assistant superintendent, elected school board member, and state chief across 5 very different states. But I'm also a mom, and it's through that lens that I feel the most urgency and responsibility to deliver better outcomes for every child in this country. After 20+ years in education, I've learned that the most significant difference between policies that work and policies that don't is that those that work elevate the needs of students over the needs of systems. We're in a moment of crisis. According to the nation's report card, just 31% of 4th graders and 30% of 8th graders are proficient in reading. In math, only 40% of 4th graders and 28% of 8th graders are proficient. Reading scores have dropped 5 points since 2019, and math remains below pre-pandemic levels. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent millions of students who are falling behind in a global economy that can't afford it. The US already faces a shortage of 1.7 million workers. Education is not a side issue, it's a national imperative. And we know what works is what delivers results. When states are empowered, we see progress. In Tennessee, we achieved real outcomes because we had the flexibility to tailor solutions. Rather than being bound by rigid funding categories, we prioritized what mattered most for our students. And it worked. Tennessee became one of only 2 states to rank in the top 25 on all 16 NAEP indicators. Our statewide literacy gains, fueled by training 30,000 teachers, supporting 178,000 families, and aligning teacher prep with the science of reading, led to the highest growth in English language arts standards since the adoption of new standards. We didn't stop there. 100,000 students gained access to industry credentials, dual credit programs, and apprenticeships. Dual enrollment in technical colleges rose by 71%. We tripled STEM school designations and mandated K-12 computer science, closed gaps in AP courses. We also made smart use of our ESSER funds. Georgetown University's Economics Lab found that Tennessee was just one of 6 states with measurable returns on investment based on NAEP. And that didn't happen by accident. It was the result of prioritizing students, trusting local leadership, and focusing relentlessly on results. None of that would have been possible without Tennessee's incredible parents, teachers, school leaders, elected officials, and community partners. Results came from local action, shared responsibility, and accountability. They made the work real. And that spirit of shared ownership and local excellence is the path forward. The President and Secretary have been clear. We must empower states, expand choice, and raise reading outcomes. I'm honored to support that mission, not just as a policymaker, but as a mom, as a teacher, and a lifelong believer in what's possible for our children. I will never forget the students in my mom's classroom, still learning to read in the 4th and 5th grades. That was nearly 35 years ago. Too little has changed. We owe it to them to finally keep our promise. I pledge to tirelessly work for them and for every other one of the 50 million students in this country. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Schwinn. We're also joined today by Kimberly Richey, President Trump's nominee for the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the Department of Education. If confirmed, Ms. Richey will lead the office that is responsible for addressing civil rights complaints from students in classrooms and on college campuses, including the backlog of Title VI complaints left unaddressed by the Biden administration. She has experience in the Office of Civil Rights, having also served there during the George W. Bush and first Trump administrations. She earned her law degree at the University of Oklahoma. I look forward to hearing from you today, and thank you for joining us, Ms. Richey.
Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, and honorable members of this committee. I am grateful and honored to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to lead the Office for Civil Rights. I want to thank President Trump and Secretary McMahon for their support and the opportunity to continue OCR's critically important work. I want to thank my family. Their love, prayers, and support have strengthened and sustained me. My husband, Dr. Larry Burney, who's here with me today, my parents, David and Arlene Richey, who are also here, my sister and brother-in-law, Dr. Jeffrey and Kelly Lind, and my greatest gifts of all, Pierce, Anna, and Ella May. While I am a teacher and an attorney, I'm first and foremost the daughter of a retired 34-year public school teacher who taught me the innate obligation and the importance of speaking up for those who have no voice and seeking justice for those to whom it has been denied. I know from my nearly 7 years in OCR the vital role it plays for so many students and families across our great nation. Students cannot gain the knowledge and skills they need to be successful in life if they can't access educational programs and activities. Secretary McMahon highlighted in her confirmation hearing the significant challenges that we're facing and reiterated a commitment to addressing these challenges. She stated, "We must protect all students from discrimination and harassment. If I'm confirmed, the department will not stand idly by while Jewish students are attacked and discriminated against. We will stop forcing schools to let boys and men into female sports and spaces." My commitment to these priorities is unwavering. Should I be confirmed, I will proudly be joining an administration that will not allow students to be intimidated, harassed, assaulted, or excluded from their institutions. I will work every day to uphold Title VI, including vigorously fighting anti-Semitism, and require schools to address these great evils. I will also fight to preserve the rights of women and girls as they try to access education programs and activities and facilities free from discrimination. Throughout my 21-year career, I've worked to increase outcomes and advance civil rights protections for students, whether it be securing services for students in day treatment programs, providing accommodations to students in state assessment systems, or setting up a charter school for students in the juvenile justice system, or creating a way for Native American students to receive world language credit for learning their native language. During my tenure as acting assistant secretary in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, OSERS issued guidance clarifying the obligations of school districts in light of the Supreme Court's groundbreaking decision in Andrew F. We also concluded what was at the time the largest investigation involving a state under IDEA. Under my leadership as acting assistant secretary of civil rights, OCR investigated and pursued enforcement action to protect and preserve the rights of women and girls examining the special education services that were provided to students in the COVID-19 pandemic. We provided technical assistance to schools implementing the 2020 Title IX regulations. We issued guidance on racial discrimination, single-sex programs, and on OCR's enforcement and use of Title VI to protect Jewish students from discrimination. As impactful as I view these and other accomplishments, it's my personal story as a student with a disability and now an individual with disabilities that most impacts my work. As a young adult, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor that changed nearly every aspect of my life. Within a matter of months, I was a student who needed the protections of 504 to access my own programs and activities in school. I know firsthand the significance and the importance of our civil rights laws. And there's no greater work than leading an agency responsible for ensuring that students get the services they need. I'm committed to upholding the laws enforced by OCR, prioritizing the mission of OCR, and conducting thorough investigations consistent with the law and the authority that Congress has granted to OCR. Sitting in this seat today, I feel blessed that exactly 20 years since I had my brain tumor removed, I now have the opportunity to lead the very office responsible for enforcing the laws that protected me. If I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, that appreciation and that mindset will guide me every day in this job, just as it has for the last 20 years. Thank you for considering my nomination and for the opportunity to be here today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. We're also joined today by Daniel Aronowitz, President Trump's nominee for Assistant Secretary of the Employee Benefits Security Administration of the Department of Labor. If confirmed, Mr. Aronowitz will lead the agency that is responsible for overseeing more than 801,000 private retirement plans, 2.6 million health plans, and 514,000 other welfare benefit plans, which collectively hold about $14 trillion in assets. He is an attorney with decades of private sector experience as a coverage lawyer and underwriter and deep knowledge of ERISA. He's a graduate of, I always hate to say this, but The Ohio State University and the Vanderbilt University School of Law. I look forward to hearing from him today. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lonowitz.
Thank you, Chairman Kay, for the Help Committee. Thank you for considering my nomination to lead the Employee Benefits Security Administration. I also thank President Trump, Secretary Chavez DeRemer, and Deputy Secretary Sonderling for nominating me. My name is Daniel Aronowitz, and I am supported today by my wife, Janine, my 17-year-old daughter, Amanda, and my 15-year-old son, Isaiah. My former Euclid business partner and mentor, John Colas, is also supporting me today. I have been a champion of employee benefit plans my entire career. After graduating from Ohio State and Vanderbilt School of Law, I started my career as a management liability insurance lawyer. I then led a turnaround at the union-owned Ulico Casualty Company, where we helped grow the union movement by protecting multi-employer and governmental plans and union workers, and helped to launch training and apprenticeship programs with innovative group workers' compensation captives. In 2011, I then founded Euclid Fiduciary, now called Encore Fiduciary, my premier fiduciary insurance underwriting company that is known for unique fiduciary thought leadership, including the Fid Guru blog, which is read by thousands of plan professionals. Encore ensures I witnessed the most important fiduciary events in the last 3 decades, including the Enron and WorldCom scandals, the Capital Consultants and Madoff Ponzi schemes, the City of Detroit bankruptcy, and the 2008 financial crisis. I have participated in hundreds of Department of Labor, PBGC, and Internal Revenue Service audits. My job, my mission, was to protect plan fiduciaries and plan assets to ensure and safeguard the accounts of every plan participant and worker insured by my company's fiduciary, crime, and cyber insurance policies. I have participated in settlements and payouts that have restored well over $1 billion to protect the retirement security of America's workers. From these experiences, I have learned how to improve America's voluntary employee benefit system. I was a lawyer, I led a corporate turnaround, and then I led a successful startup. If I am confirmed by the Senate, I will work hard to unleash and unlock the creativity and full potential of America's employee benefit system. But none of this will happen until we improve EBSA's enforcement and provide regulatory clarity on key fiduciary issues. EBSA needs a major turnaround, and I am an experienced turnaround manager with unique fiduciary expertise and experience. First, we will end the practice of open-ended investigations that go on for years. We will end the bias against ESOPs and other legitimate ways to expand retirement benefits and ownership to America's workers. EBSA's enforcement will be fair, even-handed, and efficient. Second, we will strive to provide regulatory clarity so that plan sponsors have the proper incentive to expand employee benefits. Many issues like mental health parity, private equity, cryptocurrency, and ESG considerations in plan investments require more clarity and consistency with less burden to plan sponsors. We will end the era of regulation by litigation by providing clear and effective fiduciary guidance. And we will restore discretion to plan fiduciaries as Congress intended in the ERISA statute, so that fiduciaries, not plaintiff lawyers, decide what is best for America's participants. Third and finally, I will champion the cause of encouraging plan sponsors, once we give them even-handed enforcement and regulatory clarity, to expand retirement and healthcare benefits to America's workers. With the regulatory burden and litigation risk reduced, we will unlock the full potential of the voluntary employee benefit system. Thank you for considering my nomination. I want to get to work into what.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, we're joined today by David Keeling, President Trump's nominee for Assistant Secretary of Occupational Health and Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, of the Department of Labor. If confirmed, Mr. Keeling will lead the agency that is responsible for ensuring safe workplaces for American workers. He started his career as a part-time package handler and worked his way up to leading workplace safety efforts for significant employers. He's a graduate of the University of Louisville. We look forward to hearing from you today, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, and esteemed members of this committee. I'm honored to appear before you today as a nominee for Assistant Secretary of Labor overseeing the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I want to express my deepest gratitude to President Donald J. Trump and Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer for entrusting me with this significant responsibility. It's a privilege to be considered for the role that plays such a crucial part in serving our nation, our workers, and our citizens. On a personal note, I'd like to thank my family, friends, and colleagues for their support. My amazing wife, best friend, and rock, Jamie Walker Keeling, my son Charles, and daughter Bethany. Everyone has a why. Why they get up in the morning, why we try harder each day, and why we care about making the world a better place. These three are my why. I would also like to thank my parents, James David Keeling, Charlotte Crouch Keeling, and Sister Becky Mead, as well as members of the Keeling, Crouch, Walker, and Mead families who are here with us today or are sending prayers my way. God has blessed me with a remarkable family. My outlook on life is in no small way a result of those two sets of loving parents and grandparents, James Hurdling and Geneva Jenkins Keeling, Stanley and Evelyn Wilkerson Crouch, 4 angels who ever be on my shoulder. Throughout my nearly 40 years in occupational safety and health, I've dedicated myself to ensuring that every worker goes home to the loved ones healthy and whole at the end of each day. This passion was influenced by the death of my uncle, Lonnie Crouch, who died in a farming accident at the age of 17. I never had the opportunity to know my uncle, but the pain of his death because of the pain of his death, his name wasn't used every day. However, his loss is always there at my grandparents' house, an empty chair always present at the dinner table. In my time as a safety professional at UPSer for 37 years and a Teamster, I came to understand that nothing is more beneficial than collaboration between employees and employers. I've had the opportunity and responsibility to walk on far more concrete than carpet in my career. I've learned that the best source of safety improvement originates with the people who perform the job every day. These experiences have equipped me with a deep understanding of challenges we face and importance of collaboration, transparency, and integrity. I want to take a moment to commend the dedicated career employees at OSHA, both past and present. I want to assure them that their passion is recognized and that they are greatly respected by their industry peers. I also want to reassure them that great opportunity lies in front of us. I believe that we've reached a crossroads in terms of OSHA's future and direction. My fear is that OSHA is at risk of losing its position as leadership in global health and safety space, not because of any failure on part of OSHA's people, but because of outdated systems and processes that have resisted past administrations' efforts at common sense improvement. If confirmed, my goals are straightforward and simple. First, I hope not only continue, but greatly accelerate the pace of modernization in the area of regulatory oversight and rulemaking, bringing to bear technologies and predictive analytics, which move beyond simple regulatory compliance and post-injury response to injury prevention to informed design. We must take advantage of existing global industry consensus standards, which have gone through much more rigorous review, regular updating, and continuous improvement than have many of OSHA's existing rules. It will not come as a surprise to this committee that many of OSHA's existing standards have become antiquated or unusable in the face of modernization or technological advancements within the workplace. Second, expanding OSHA's leadership in the areas of cooperation and collaboration between professional groups, companies, and unions. We all want the same thing, although we differ sometimes what the best road is to get there. We must move beyond existing silos and self-improved post barriers to achieve real improvement. Further, we must modernize and update existing voluntary protection programs. The current VPP programs provide a basic platform, but it's only a start. Critical work needs to be done in this area to achieve successful outcomes. I truly believe that greatness in employee health and safety is worth pursuing. My third and final goal relates to OSHA enforcement transformation. Technology exists today which wasn't available to OSHA when it was originally put into place in the 1970s. We now have the ability to use existing data to greatly enhance on-site safety efforts through predictive analytics. We must engage at-risk employers and employees through proactive risk mitigation and reduction programs before a worksite tragedy has taken place or a fatality has occurred. We should never get to the work site after it's too late. If confirmed, I'm committed to working with each of you so that no family sits down at the dinner table with an empty chair. I believe that by working with this committee and the stakeholders across ideological spectrum, we can achieve real and meaningful progress. And I hope to achieve these goals with your help. I welcome the opportunity to address your questions and to discuss how my vision aligns with priorities of this committee and constituent workforces we serve. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. I'll begin. Dr. Schwinn, when President Trump nominated you, he said that, quote, "You have a strong record of delivering results for children and families and are committed to delivering the American dream to the next generation by returning education back to the states." Very quickly, because I have limited time, the president trusts your leadership and judgment. Tell me why you think he selected you to be the Deputy Secretary of Education, and be concise.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I met with the president, he said he wanted a strong, outcomes-oriented, conservative education leader who shared his vision to make the United States the #1 country in the world related to student outcomes. We talked about school choice, we talked about literacy, and we talked about how to make America the highest performing. And he looked at my track record on all of those issues, saw that we had done incredible work in Tennessee, and what I could do to take my management experience and make that real for 50 million children in this country.
Under this administration, the department has been very clear about efforts to make sure that federal funding does not support violations of federal civil rights protections, including the use of divisive race-based ideology, the promotion of leftist ideology, and undermining parental rights around abortion, sex education, and transgender issues. If confirmed, can you commit that you're aligned with President Trump's policy agenda on these issues? And please elaborate on your record at the state and local level on these issues.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. These were also issues that I discussed with the president and also with Secretary McMahon. In Tennessee, to give specific examples, under my tenure there, a number of laws and policies were passed both by the governor and the General Assembly. We passed laws within that state looking at divisive materials and ideologies in the classroom related to instructional materials, as well as the implementation of those laws. My responsibility was to implement the laws as passed, something that I'm very, very committed to in alignment, and those laws were in alignment with President Trump's agenda and the executive orders that have been put out. My responsibility in my role as commissioner was to ensure that, one, there was strong local authority so that local communities, families, students had an opportunity to weigh in on what was appropriate for their local communities. Two, they had the opportunity to ensure that they had an appellate process so that the state was there to ensure that the law was being enforced as intended. But three, the consequences for not following the law. In Tennessee, those consequences, if you did not follow the law, were pretty severe. If you refused to do that, it was a $1 million fine on the first infraction, up to $5 million and 10% of your state funds on the fifth infraction. We took it very, very seriously in the state. That continues to be the policy. And that is because we believe very, very clearly that we need to teach the standards. We need to make sure students are reading on grade level, able to do math on grade level, and empowered to do what they want to do when they graduate from high school.
Okay. Then this next two may go to you and Ms. Richey, I'm sorry. According to NIH-sponsored research, almost 20% of the population is dyslexic, meaning they learn to read differently. And despite it being the most prevalent specific learning disability, students are rarely tested. Now, studies have shown that children who suffer from undiagnosed dyslexia have lifelong harm with lower career wages, reduced graduation rates, and increased rates of incarceration. As the Department of Education streamlines educational funding, how can we ensure that resources are there to identify and address an issue, specifically speaking of dyslexia?
So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and speak specifically to that. I couldn't agree more. Addressing dyslexia at the earliest ages, especially characteristics of dyslexia, is one of the most important things we can do to ensure that our students are reading on grade level by that critical third grade measure. One of the things that we did in Tennessee was we included characteristics of dyslexia in our education formula so that it was funded as part of the special education disability categories. We increased funding for special education specifically to address that issue using existing state funding. Number two, is we increased assessment to have that early indication and warning. And I think one of the things that we can do at the federal level is to support all of our states and territories with guidance on how they can empower themselves from the laws and policies that work best within their local communities. Being able to share Mississippi, Louisiana, some of the great work that's happened in Florida and Indiana, Tennessee, sharing those best practices to see how we actually grow at a faster rate on areas like characteristics of dyslexia will be incredibly important.
I'm out of time, but I may come back, Ms. Ritchie, at the end of it after. I don't want to hold other people up. Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you. Mr. Keeling, the nation's nurses face challenging working conditions that are too frequently exacerbated by instances of workplace violence. It's a financial issue for our healthcare system as well. The American Hospital Association released a report just this week that states hospitals spent more than $18 billion in 2023 on costs associated with managing workplace violence. We had a chance to talk about workplace violence when we met earlier this year, and I appreciated hearing that you take this issue very seriously. My Workplace Violence Prevention for Healthcare and Social Services Workers Act would address this issue through congressional action. And the Department of Labor currently plans to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking in June, now this month of this year, for the workplace violence in healthcare rulemaking. Do you commit to getting this proposed rule issued and finalized as soon as you're confirmed?
Senator Baldwin, thank you for that. And I do appreciate the time we were able to spend in your office. Thank you very much for that. As I mentioned earlier, I actually have two family members here today who are involved in home health care or healthcare at facilities right now. So absolutely, I see it as being an opportunity for massive opportunity for improvement, and I look forward to working with your office on that.
Thank you. Ms. Ritchie, in 2020, the Supreme Court ruled in the Bostock v. Clayton County case that the word sex in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act encompasses protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Justice Gorsuch wrote the opinion which ruled that it is illegal to discriminate against someone in the workplace for being gay or transgender. The Department of Education released guidance in 2021 in response to this opinion while you were serving as acting assistant secretary. In fact, I have a letter here that you sent regarding a student's complaint where you stated, and I quote, Title IX does not mention discrimination on the basis of a student's sexual orientation. Both Title VII and Title IX prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, yes? Yes?
That's correct, Senator. I
Okay.
think the
So
language
do
is
you
different.
still stand behind the Department of Education's interpretation of Title IX while you were there previously?
So Senator, in order to answer that question, I really need to provide the full answer and the full scope of how the department implemented the Bostock opinion. It is a little more complicated than that. May I have a moment to
Well, I
do that?
think your letter speaks for itself. It says Title IX does not mention discrimination on the basis of a student's sexual orientation. This was a complaint filed by a child based on discrimination in school based on sexual orientation.
Senator, there are also two letters of complaints that I did open following the Bostock opinion in response to complaints that had been filed with OCR alleging sexual orientation and gender identity. We did take the Bostock analysis. We did identify a path forward for applying Bostock to OCR cases in certain situations and in certain circumstances. The only area where under the first term where we said that it did not apply consistent with Bostock was in regards to athletics, to locker rooms, and to restrooms. There was a path forward to apply Bostock in all other
So
cases.
is it accurate to say that you believe that LGBTQ students do or do not have protections against discrimination in schools? What is your position?
Senator, my position is that students who file complaints with OCR alleging discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, those cases would be investigated by OCR consistent with Title IX, with the Bostock case, and with OCR's regulations.
Well, I want to just put for the record, especially given your written comments on this earlier, that in 2021, the National School Climate Survey found that 58.9% of LGBTQ students experience discriminatory policies or practices at school. And we know that LGBTQ kids are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. These kids are in dire need of protection against discrimination. If confirmed, I hope you will act in the best interests of all children.
Coach Tuberville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for all of you willing to serve. It's a privilege to have y'all here. Dr. Schwinn, I wonder if people can give the definition of national emergency. That's what we have in our education system. It's pitiful. I've been in it 35 years and it's getting worse. Last 4 years, we just brushed over the problems, didn't try to correct any. I would hope that you would be really involved in this. Our kids can't read and write, majority of them. It's a disaster. It's a shame. It's criminal, to be honest with you. Would you please get that out of the classroom? Because kids can't learn when they're looking at a text. I'm sick of hearing about we need those in the classroom. Let's take our schools back. We've given it over to the people that actually don't want to educate our kids. So thanks for your background in educational agencies. And, you know, if confirmed, I hope you would assist Secretary McMahon in executing at the more local level. Can you address that?
Absolutely, and thank you for that. I couldn't agree more as the parent of a 13-year-old. Absolutely, one of the things that we did in Tennessee that I think was the secret sauce and has been over a long period of time is that locals know what's best for their communities and their students. Memphis, Tennessee and Lake County, Tennessee are 3 to 4 hours apart and could not be more different. My home state of California and my adopted home state of Tennessee could not be more different. We need to make sure that locals are empowered to make the best decisions for their students. And when the money is closest to the child, when the decisions are closest to the child, we can best serve the child. And I am completely aligned with Secretary McMahon to ensure that we can help our states and our local communities to make the best decisions for their students in their communities.
School choice should be an option. You know, I've been in many inner city schools, and for some reason, a lot of my colleagues do not want to educate kids in the inner city. School choice should be mandatory in a lot of our inner cities because they can't read and write. And if you can't read and write, you can't take advantage of the greatest country ever. Ms. Richey, Title IX, Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act is what I've been trying to get passed for years. It makes no sense to me what's going on. I mean, we got a huge problem if we can't define the difference of men playing in women's sports. It's dangerous. We all know that. I mean, it's something that we better get it straight because little girls aren't going to get into sports and we're not going to have women's sports 10, 15 years from now. We got entire high school teams that are made now of transgender boys that can't figure out that they're not supposed to be in that it's for women. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator, for the question. I grew up playing basketball, played into college. I could not have competed against biological men. It just was not something that I would have been able to do. One of the things I'm really proud of under the first term is that OCR investigated and took to enforcement one of the very first cases initiated by the federal government, which actually determined that policies that allow students to participate based on sexual orientation or gender identity actually violated Title IX because they deprive women and girls of the opportunity to participate in athletics. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the way that the secretary and the president have prioritized this issue. And I'm certainly committed to vigorously enforcing it and continuing to pursue these cases.
Thank you. We've got the Olympics here in a couple of years, few years in LA. We're going to be a joke if we allow that to happen. On the world stage. So hopefully we come to our senses by that time and show the little girls that, yes, you do have an opportunity. Financial Freedom Act. The Biden administration pretty much prohibited being able to put your finances where they wanted to at the end of the day. And I've been trying to get that passed. Would you commit to supporting legislation that would provide Americans the freedom to invest their own money to how they see fit?
Decide what's in retirement plans, not government bureaucrats, not plaintiff lawyers, no one else. Fiduciaries know what's best, and I am committed to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Coach. Coach always brings his experience as a coach to the playing field, and I appreciate that. Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of you. You know, for nearly 160 years, the federal government has published the Condition of Education Report, which is really critical to help us understand how students in schools are doing. But this year, for the first time ever, the National Center for Education Statistics missed its June 1st deadline to publish the report, which is actually required by law. This happened after the department fired almost all of the National Center for Education Statistics staff and canceled contracts that was needed to complete that work. Now, all we have is a bare bones highlight document with no explanation to Congress or to the public, and that is really unacceptable. Students, families, teachers all deserve to see a full report. And this is not just about one report. NCES is also responsible for administering the National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, which you referred to, Dr. Schwinn, also required by law, as you know. I have written the secretary on this issue and not yet received an adequate response, and the department has not yet provided a promised briefing to me on NAEP. So Dr. Schwinn, I wanted to ask you, if you're confirmed, will you ensure that NCES finally and fully and promptly produces a complete condition of education report and has the staff that it needs to carry out all of its statutory required duties, including NAEP?
Thank you for the question. If confirmed, I will absolutely ensure that we follow all of the laws that you all have passed, and certainly want to reinforce our commitment to NAEP and its full execution.
I appreciate that. Well, clearly the decimation of NCES has compromised its ability to provide the data that we in Congress and the public rely on. So I hope that you will work to see that those cuts are reversed, because we can't afford to fly blind when it comes to knowing how our students, schools, and students and our schools are doing. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you, Senator.
Dr. Schwinn, the bipartisan under Senator Alexander.
Yes.
I helped write that as well with him. It requires states to identify and support their most struggling schools. But according to the GAO now, less than half of the schools that were identified for additional support have compliant improvement plans. The department has only reviewed 3 out of 5 states total so far this year, with no plans for further oversight. And it's really hard to imagine that the rate of review improves because of the massive cuts we have seen across the department. So I wanted to ask you, what is your proposal to improve the department's rate of review and therefore help our nation's struggling schools and students?
Thank you for the question. I think the most important thing in your question is to say that there must be a commitment to ensuring that our most struggling schools improve, because our students deserve that. If confirmed, one of my top priorities is going to be looking at any of the departments within the Department of Education and ensuring that we know our statutory obligations, certainly to Congress, that we have the most efficient practices in place, and that we meet our obligations. And I look forward to working with you on any of those.
Would you commit to publicly reporting the department's monitoring findings and state responses so Congress and educators and students and families can see where the struggling schools are?
I would certainly want to discuss that with Secretary McMahon, but I would absolutely want to work with your office on that project. Thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Richey, do you believe that the staff at OCR are important to protect students' civil rights?
I do, Senator.
And do you believe that every complaint must be investigated in a timely way?
I do.
Well, earlier this week, Secretary McMahon, appearing before another committee, told me that the current backlog is 2,500 cases. The department later clarified to me that it's actually 25,000 backlog. This administration has fired more than half of the staff at OCR, and President Trump is now asking in his budget to slash that by $49 million next year. So explain to me how those firings and that funding cut will help reduce that backlog. I want to understand how you're going to square that circle.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Senator, and the opportunity to weigh in. As you can imagine, as a nominee, I do not have access to information with regard to the decisions that are being made at the department. I'm not in communication with OCR leadership or the secretary. One of the reasons why this role is so important to me is because I am always going to advocate for OCR to have the resources that it needs to do its job. So I think that what it means is that I'm going to have to be really strategic if I'm confirmed stepping into this role, helping come up with a plan where we can address these challenges.
Okay, well, I think it's pretty clear if you have a 25,000 case backlog and you fire half the staff, cut the budget by 36%, it's going to be pretty hard to get those cases through. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you're feeling better. Thank you to all of you for being here today. Certainly, this is hard on not only you to prepare and go through, but I know your families. And thank you for your families for being here and your supporters for standing strong with you as you face some really challenging questions, but the roles will be no less challenging. So this is a good testament to how you will perform in your roles. So welcome to the Senate. You were called, all of you, to lead important offices, and it's no surprise that you all are well qualified. I have been amazed at the talent that this administration has attracted, and I thank you. To answer the call of public service is not only a sacrifice for you, but also for those that are at home when you go home at night. So thank you to your families. I'm excited to see another Floridian taking on a leadership role here in DC. Department of Education. They have brought so much of the Florida leadership here to DC. I think it snowed the third week in January in Florida, historically. So it's good to see you. Too much sunshine up here. It's never a bad thing. Unlike previous years, President Trump has come in immediately and is shining a light on anti-Semitic chaos and crime on our campuses. For that, we are all grateful. And whether it's by withholding federal funding or by moving to revoke the accreditation of failing institutions, the message is clear that institutions must ensure the safety of their students on campus and not allow anti-Semitism or violation of civil rights to go unchecked. This is something that I think all of us sat in horror as we watched on our campuses, as it played out on TV, and then as we heard the calls for help coming in. Certainly in Florida, we took a very strong approach to make sure that not only our law enforcement understood crimes that were being committed and took appropriate action, that our prosecutors understood we couldn't let those that were committing crimes right back out, right back on campus. That's very important, but also a follow-up to make sure that leadership is not continuing to either promote or allow for a violation of civil rights. That is so important. Yeah. And I think it's probably no surprise that I want to talk to you, Ms. Richey. This morning, I have filed a proposed bill called the Reclaim Act, and it's a way to give the administration another tool to go after those universities that are allowing the violation of civil rights by taking back taxpayer dollars to ensure Americans are not funding institutions that continue to foster anti-Semitic crime or behavior. really, I believe, anti-American
Yes.
behavior. And I believe that each of you in your roles can help play a part of this. But Ms. Richey, I would like to ask you, in your capacity as Assistant Secretary for the Office of Civil Rights, you'll be tasked with continuing to hold those institutions of higher education accountable for failures in light of some of these violations of civil rights. I know this is a priority for this administration. Have you contemplated, or how do you expect on day one in your official capacity of addressing this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Senator, for the question and for your leadership on this issue. I should say first, right, that with the recent tragedies that we've seen in Colorado and even with the shootings here in DC, that those incidents are emblematic of the horrific acts that Jewish students are facing across the country. And I'm so appreciative of the forcefulness that the administration is using. It's merited in this environment. It's merited and it's necessary. This will continue. Fighting anti-Semitism will continue to be a priority for me. I think there's a lot of tools in OCR's toolbox that we can use to fight anti-Semitism. You're already seeing directed investigations and compliance reviews to target certain schools, certain universities, to put this issue at the forefront. I think we need to look at issuing guidance in a post-October 7th world, right? The climate is very different than what it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. I think we could look at amending the Title VI regulations to specifically address anti-Semitism. One of the things that I feel like is my strength is the opportunity to partner across the department. I've done it with restraint and seclusion. I've done it with sexual assault in K-12. This is an area where I would want to partner with the post-secondary education office to see what ways we can use their tools and OCR's tools to really vigorously enforce Title VI.
And I think that completes my time, Mr. Chairman. Under time.
Thank you, Senator Moody. Next is Senator Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, and thank you to all the nominees and your families. I'd like to follow up on some questions from Senator Baldwin and Senator Murray, and starting with you, Ms. Richey. In March of this year, the Department of Education closed 7 of its 12 civil rights enforcement offices, including the Philadelphia office, which serves my state of Delaware. And at the time, it was reported that there were more than 6,500 open cases across this region and 811 open cases in the Philadelphia office alone. And I guess I want to start off by recognizing that if we're closing offices, if we're firing staff, and we already knew there was a backlog, first, I'd love to have a commitment from you that you inform Congress shortly after you're nominated, as well as those impacted individuals and families who are waiting and don't know where their cases are, what offices they are now going to. Would first like a commitment that will be a priority for you should you be confirmed, to make sure you alert us, but also those impacted families on where did their cases go.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, Senator. As I mentioned to Senator Murray, I am always going to advocate that OCR have the resources and the tools that it needs to do its job. And what part of OCR's job is to openly and directly communicate with parents and families so that they know the status of their complaints. I'm certainly committed to transparency with this body and certainly to communicating with parents across the country.
Yeah, I understand that you're not in the position now, but I know you were acting in the position. You served as acting secretary. And I guess one of the questions I also have is, when you were there before, did you have the resources you needed before? I mean, does it make sense now to, if there was already a backlog, to then cut people and shutter offices? Do you have first of all, that's the first question. Did you have what you needed before as a department?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish under President Trump's first term, holding Penn State accountable for Jerry Sandusky's sexual misconduct, holding Michigan State.
I was just curious
responsible.
about like the
Yeah.
ratio and the staffing. Did you have what you needed before?
I don't recall the specific ratio to staff when it comes to complaints versus how they were dispersed across the staff. We effectively enforced civil rights laws, and that's what OCR should always do.
Well, I appreciate your commitment to transparency and would love for you to also report back to Congress any information about caseload ratios of the remaining staff so that we can get a better understanding. Understanding of how things are now compared to how things were before. We all know that the world has shifted online, meaning web accessibility is more important than ever, including for students with disabilities. And a recent survey found that only 10% of college faculty believe their college provides adequate tools to support students with disabilities, including online materials. In 2024, the Department of Justice issued new regulations under the ADA requiring public schools, colleges, and universities to make their websites and apps accessible by 2027. And last month, this committee even voted unanimously in favor of an amendment I proposed to reaffirm that commitment to web accessibility for all students. Yet OCR cut half the staff focused on resolving digital accessibility complaints earlier this year. So it's hard for me, again, to think if we didn't have the resources before, cutting staff, shuttering offices, doing away with folks that are going to help provide accessibility, it will make things better. If you're confirmed, would you commit to having web accessibility be a priority, particularly in light of your own personal story that you shared? Will you devote resources and time to this issue?
Thank you, Senator. I'm very proud that under the previous administration, all the way dating back to the Bush administration, that we always prioritized web accessibility. We formed a specific team.
It just doesn't feel like a
focus.
priority when we cut the people
Yeah.
who make it possible.
I think what's important is that even without a specific law addressing web accessibility, websites have to be accessible currently under 504, right? That's an existing
Exactly.
legal requirement.
Exactly.
So I'm always going to enforce.
So the answer is
OCR's laws.
yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes. And lastly, if I could, just want to make sure whistleblowers, particularly from retaliation, just a yes or no.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Good job sneaking a question in, Senator Blatton Rochester. I was asleep at the wheel. Senator Husted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Aronowitz, I know that you are from a working class part of Ohio, so congratulations on your job, very appropriate. You mentioned something in your testimony about ESOPs. That's a great way to help businesses involve their employees, keep the legacy of those businesses in those communities. So I encourage you to do all you can to help support those in your role. I just wanted to say that to you. Don't need you to answer anything. I just wanted you to know that. Dr. Schwinn, you're going to get the rest of my time, okay? So here's the thing. Everybody in education has a tough job. Because why? Because we love our kids. We want the best for our, and I've been astonished over my time working on education my whole life, how policymakers want to stand in way of the judgment of parents over what the best path is for their children. Because all children learn differently. All children have different interests. I've visited hundreds and hundreds of schools over my time. They are STEM schools, art schools, charter schools, religious schools, tech cred, you name it. All of these different things that help prepare children for different pathways. And I want to talk with you about the idea of freedom. We say we love freedom in this country. Educational freedom should be one that we embrace wholeheartedly. And when I was Speaker of the House in Ohio, I created a program in 2005 called the Ed Choice Scholarship. It's a statewide voucher program now that has over 160,000 children enrolled in it at some level. And the Urban Institute recently conducted a study that showed that children who have a voucher in the Ed Choice Scholarship are 32% more likely to enroll in college than those who remained in the same public schools. So it works. Doesn't mean that enrolling in college is the most important measure. The most important measure is getting a child prepared to do whatever they want to do, but it's a valuable measure, and it shows that male students, Black students, below median test score students, and families from low incomes benefit the most from those opportunities. And so I want to just ask you, what do you believe that you can do? First of all, do you believe in the philosophy that I just articulated? And two, how can you help advance that if you do indeed agree with it?
Thank you for that question. And most importantly, as a parent and an educator, thank you for your work and advocacy on behalf of students and families. So one, yes, I believe that certainly as the parent of three very, very different children, every child needs something different. And I believe school choice is a way to do that. There are a lot of different school models. Certainly there are traditional public schools, magnet schools, public charter schools, private schools, parochial schools, et cetera. And it is really up to local communities and states to figure out the policies that can be put into place to give parents as many options as possible so they can choose the best fit for their child. I think that is incredibly important with an outcomes orientation in mind, because we get to do the best for 50 million kids. In my capacity, if confirmed as deputy commissioner, I think there are 2 or 3 things that I can do specifically to make that outcome more real for more families. Number one is states need to have a better sense of guidance about what is and is not possible with the use of dollars and current federal policy. Number two is there are a lot of states doing an incredibly innovative and interesting work. That's everything from Miami-Dade in Florida, who's building a classical model within their traditional public schools, to the state of Arkansas, who's just done a universal school choice and voucher program. We can provide different states with models that fit their particular local communities. And then number three, I think one of the best things that we can do is we can provide more information, transparency, and action-oriented information for families. Families need to make those decisions, not policymakers. The government is not the parent. We need to empower parents to make the decisions, give them those choices.
Great. And I love that you have the Department of Labor and Department of Education here, because they need to be connected, right? Because particularly with career tech, we set a record for the number of children enrolled in career tech. Every job is going to require some type of technical training. It doesn't mean you have to go to college, though. There's so many ways to do it. I encourage you to lean in on career tech. But two final points I want to raise of some things that I've noticed over time is that one of the things that we've been doing in Ohio, and I know other states are doing it as well, get the smartphones out of the schools. I know we don't want to tell people how to do these things. There are policies to do it. But when you talk to parent principals who say, yes, as soon as I got the smartphone out, the lunchroom got noisy again because children are actually talking to one another. Discipline problems are down. Learning is up. Bullying is down. All of the things have dramatically improved. And then you mentioned the science of reading. It is abundantly clear. The facts are clear that it is the way to teach reading. What thoughts do you have on those two topics?
So number one, I would love to see cell phones be more restricted in schools. And frankly, I would love to see those companies provide the pouches and pockets for students to store them in. Second is I believe that the science of reading should be in every single state. And more importantly, we should be focused on implementation. Your state has done an incredible job on that, as so many of the others have. And we need to go further and faster and push harder on quality implementation and return on investment.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Husted. Senator Also Brooks.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. First of all, to all of our nominees, thank you, congratulations, and thank you for being here today. I have questions for 2 of our witnesses. One is Mr. Keeling. I'll begin with you. Just want to talk to you about the emergency response standard. Baltimore City Fire Department was left recently in mourning in recent weeks following the deaths of 2 of our city. I know that you push back against the immediate need for an updated emergency response standard. And the proposed rule from OSHA would update what is now a nearly 50-year-old fire brigade standard and improve safety and health protections for emergency responders. We know that the rule would require access to behavioral health resources and improve minimum standards for staffing, apparatus readiness, and protective clothing. So I wonder whether you believe that there is a need to increase workplace protections for firefighters.
All workers, including our emergency response service members, need to be able to turn home healthy at the end of the day. So there's no disagreement at all there. I think when you look at the standard itself, there's a path through. So if I came across as pushing back, that wasn't my intention. I think there is a path through on that issue, but there are some concerns, I think, from volunteer fire departments and others coming in about how they make that work from a voluntary firefighter and a limited budget perspective. So I think there's a path through. I just don't know that, and I haven't been in contact with the career folks at OSHA yet, just being a nominee. I think there's a path forward. I just don't know if it's exactly as written right now.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And then would you commit then to work toward really an immediate adoption of at least a slightly revised standard that minimizes detrimental effects on volunteer fire departments?
I will commit, Senator, that will be one of the first conversations I have with the career team if I'm confirmed.
Okay, and then just lastly, the concern, we have 350,000 members of the International Association of Firefighters who endorse Secretary Chavez DeRemer, but we are really concerned about mental health for our firefighters, and I wonder whether you believe that mental health issues are an occupational hazard for certain professions. We know that our fire department, for example, had to really take matters into its own hands, start its own center, the National Center of Excellence Treatment for PTSD. I wonder whether you believe this is an occupational hazard.
Absolutely, I do. I feel that it's something that, depending on the work that's done, the potential trauma or the situations that workers are put in, whether it's a fireman, a policeman, there's a number of healthcare workers we mentioned earlier. There's a number of workplaces out there where the stress needs to be considered.
Thank you. And, and finally, and I know you weren't a part of this decision, but, this administration paused the firefighter cancer registry at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And we know that 70% of our line of duty deaths are due to occupational cancer. So I'm just concerned about that. Want to just put that on your radar as well. I think it was the wrong decision. Ms. Richey, just want to quickly also ask you a question. The administration, as you've heard this morning, has slashed the Office for Civil Rights staff. But they've also signaled that there will be a reprioritization of case adjudication at the Office of Civil Rights, placing some forms of discrimination over others. First of all, do you agree that it is important for OCR to treat all forms of discrimination equally, to ensure that we are sending the message that all forms of discrimination, all violations of the Civil Rights Act are unacceptable?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I do believe that all forms of discrimination, all complaints that are filed with OCR, that it's important to vigorously enforce all of the federal laws that OCR is responsible for enforcing.
Okay, and so in that same vein, in your opinion then, is discrimination based on religion any worse than discrimination, for example, based on race?
So it's somewhat of a difficult question to answer, Senator, since the Office for Civil Rights does not have specific jurisdiction over religion. It's for purposes of this office, it's almost like comparing apples and oranges. I think I would have to go back to my original statement, which is that any claim of discrimination is wrong. One student that is harmed for being discriminated against, that's enough, right? It's all wrong, and it should all be addressed.
Exactly. So then you would agree that discrimination based on race, religion, disability, ancestry, they're all equally important. There is no distinction in terms of their importance. All forms of discrimination are wrong.
I don't disagree with that, Senator, and I think that the Office for Civil Rights is focusing on all complaints.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your willingness to serve. I want to start with you, Dr. Schwinn. As you know, Alaska has the greatest number of Indian tribes in any state, and a lot of focus now on what more we can be doing on the education front. Alaska Native leaders and parents are really interested in doing more when it comes to self-determination over their children's education. In the In the last reauthorization of ESSA, I included language to require states and school districts to engage in meaningful consultation with tribal representatives. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of engagement as we had hoped since 2017. It's been across multiple administrations here. And so I would just like to put this to your attention, recognizing that it is important to meet the requirements of meaningful consultation, whether it is in the Department of Education or whether it is in Interior, it is across our government. And so I put that in front of you here today. And another issue that I'd like to bring to your attention, the state of Alaska is moving forward with a pilot program to create what we call STEC, State Tribal Education Compact Schools. Secretary McMahon has met with some of the STEC schools representatives. This would effectively, with this compact, education compact with the tribes, would be public schools that are open to all students to offer culturally relevant educational models. I don't know if you've been brought up to speed, if you've had any conversations on these, but we're hoping that you would be able to effectively advocate for additional support as we move forward with these initiatives in Alaska.
Thank you. I will go ahead and say that your staff gave me a little bit of information and gave me some information to follow up on if I'm so confirmed, but really look forward to working with your office on that and want to just congratulate you on what I think is a really innovative program and look forward to seeing more about it.
Well, we feel like we need to be innovative because the status quo has not helped our Native students. And when our Native students do not do well, Alaskan students writ large do not do well. And so we want to be doing more in this area. Let me turn to you, Mr. Aronowitz. You're probably very familiar with the angst that's been expressed by some about the need for a single, clear regulatory definition of good faith effort for valuing ESOP stock. The concern is that instead of having a clear definition that's spelled out in regulation, ESOPs have been operating under this kind of a patchwork of litigation and investigation. There's also some concern that the department has taken excessive enforcement actions against ESOPs. Can you speak very briefly to your views on these?
I believe that Congress wants ESOPs, and everybody's for ESOPs except the Department of Labor the last 20 years. And I will end the war on ESOPs. I think it's the best way for employees to get an additional benefit and ownership in an American company. The valuation companies have all been sued by the Department of Labor. That can't be right that every single one of them are doing it wrong. What the department is doing is nitpicking the professional judgment of the valuation professionals. I'm going to put an end to that because I think unless there's a clear conflict of interest, then the valuation is appropriate when done by an independent valuation firm.
Well, there are so many in my state where the ESOP is really looked at and valued as that commitment to not only that business, but employer security as well, employee security as well. So thank you for that. Mr. Keeling, OSHA has traditionally relied on NIOSH data and recommendations for many of the workplace safety standards. I come from a state where we unfortunately have a high incidence of accidents on the workforce. The commercial fishing industry has been tagged as one of the most dangerous occupations in the country. We have significant and severe wildfires every year, so we worry about health and safety risks to our firefighters. We have seen the administration moving forward with some pretty significant cuts to NIOSH, and I'm concerned that this is going to hamper some of the vital research that's out there. So I don't know if you can speak to whether we have a plan on how we fill the data and information gap if NIOSH is unable to produce what we need in terms of timely data and recommendations as you work to inform rulemaking.
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. There is a gap, if you will, if NIOSH doesn't exist, right? But there are ways through that, I think. Use of private entities to fill some of those gaps. I'm not in place. I have not spoken to anyone in the career side from OSHA on that point. And NIOSH doesn't directly report to the Department of Labor. So there's a little bit of a difference there, a separation there as well. About how we do that, but I think there are paths through. I think through using the professional groups that are out there, and by using some private resources, there are ways to fill the gap. Not necessarily easily, but there are ways.
Right, we don't want to see those gaps. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The rule that time. Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Richey, I want to just start with you. You know, a lot of conversation about the scourge of anti-Semitism that we're facing right now. I guess I just want to ask you, is anti-Semitism getting better or worse in America?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I think, one of the benefits of having sat in the various roles in which I've served is that, I started working on these issues, back in 2004. And so I do have the full scope of, seeing the picture for
And
20
what
years.
does it look like to you from
I
your work
do
you
think
did
it's
2
I
decades?
do think it's getting worse. I think when we were dealing with these issues 20 years ago, we were looking at classic harassment, classic intimidation. I think what it has evolved into is threats, violence, exclusion, a much more severe and a much more persistent.
So
and-
if it's getting worse, doesn't it make sense then that we would invest more in countering anti-Semitism and invest more in the Office of Civil Rights?
Well, I certainly think that the administration is prioritizing investigations involving anti-Semitism. I think they're aggressively and forcefully, identifying.
But how does that mesh with just the facts that we're seeing reductions in the staff at the Office of Civil Rights?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Senator. As I mentioned before, I can't explain or provide information on decisions that I wasn't involved in or decisions that I didn't make. I am not in a position right now to
So-
be in communication with department leadership.
Well, just to get a sense of your thinking here on this front, though, I supported and I've called for a doubling of the Office of Civil Rights budget. Is that something you would be open to?
Yeah, I think that, this body will determine in coordination with the president and the secretary what an appropriate budget is. And my job is to focus on the needs of OCR, how to take its resources, its
I
staff.
hope that but I just guess I'd ask you, will you commit to this committee that if you get confirmed and you see your resources and if there are needs, then you'll come back to us and have an honest conversation with us about those needs?
Senator, I am always, as I mentioned before, I'm always going to advocate that OCR have the staff and the resources it needs to do its job.
Now, when it comes to, I had a conversation with members of the disability community, disability advocates, so I appreciate some of what you said there earlier. I will be honest with you, they are concerned about some of the discussion out there about moving the OCR over to the Department of Justice. They're worried about the fact that, Health and Human Services Secretary told me that she thinks IDEA should be over at HHS. I'd like your reaction to that because I promised them I would ask you this. So do you support keeping OCR at the Department of Ed?
Yeah, Senator, one of the things that I appreciate the most about the president's directive to the secretary about examining where education lies and the federal role in education is that he is the first president to turn the focus on students, to stop and say, what is best for students? What is best for families?
But
The
if it's
current
about best for
structure-
students, why is it moving it out of the Department of Ed an idea to be considered?
The current structure is not serving students. The current structure is not meeting the needs of students. We would have higher NAEP scores. We would see better outcomes if what we were doing right now is working. So what I appreciate and what I agree with is the conversation for us to stop and look at how can we better meet the needs of students? How can we better serve families? I think that's an important discussion and I appreciate.
I don't
the
disagree with
president's-
you that there are things we can improve when it comes to education, but what we have seen is a dramatic increase in support and to students with disabilities. We're not perfect on that, but I think there's a lot of concern that the rug is going to be pulled out from under them, and that a system that they've been trying to work on to improve And again, we should be investing more in. So I just wanted to raise that with you because I know you raised this as an importance for you. And I think it's something that we owe the disability community, we owe students with disabilities and their families a clear answer on what is to come. Ms. Schwinn, I just wanted to ask you, do you see value in having foreign students study at U.S. colleges and universities?
I appreciate the question. I would say that I think there is value for students to receive a excellent higher education. And so that would be my answer.
Yeah, I guess I would just say it's not just for them. And this is something that I read a very interesting op-ed from you when you talked about the importance of R&D. And you talked about mRNA, you talked about AI. Those are advancements that immigrants and foreign students helped our country push forward. So it's not just about the benefit to foreign students, it's a benefit to the United States, to our global competitiveness. Is that something you would agree to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Ms. Richey, if I could just start with you, I just want to clarify something that you said to Senator Baldwin a moment or two ago. She asked you about OCR investigations into alleged cases of discrimination on the basis of gender identity under Title IX. And you said, I think, I'm looking at our quick transcript of your remarks. I was sitting here. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. You said that the OCR, Department of Ed OCR, would investigate alleged cases of gender identity discrimination. Why is that?
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Senator, and for the opportunity to have a detailed discussion about it. So in 2017, OCR clarified that transgender students, that students who bring allegations forth based on sexual orientation and gender identity were protected from harassment under Title IX. Sex stereotyping, a very narrow set of cases applied to protect students on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. That was back in 2017. Following the Bostock case, OCR had to step back and determine how Bostock applied to Title IX cases. There are a lot of reasons it didn't apply, and I can walk through those because they're significant. But what OCR finally determined is that because of the holding in Bostock, that Bostock could inform OCR's evaluation of complaints that allege discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation identity to determine if they involve biological sex, which is consistent with the Bostock opinion. So what we held is that Bostock could inform a limited sect of OCR cases pertaining to different treatment, pertaining to harassment, pertaining to bullying, but we drew a hard line at universally accepting Bostock to apply to all Title IX cases. What we said is that because the Supreme Court said that biological sex was not relevant in the termination of those employees in Bostock, that we would also look at the relevance of sex in our cases. And what we determined is that sex is relevant in certain instances. Sex is relevant with regard to restrooms. Sex is relevant with regard to locker rooms. And sex is relevant with regard to athletic teams. So it was a very nuanced approach.
But sex is not gender identity. And the Bostock decision is Title VII. The Supreme Court specifically reserved the question of whether or not it applied to Title IX. Justice Gorsuch is very clear on this. Now, the Biden administration didn't heed that warning at all, as you know.
Yes, sir.
They subsequently issued guidance that attempted to rewrite Title IX completely.
Yes,
That guidance has been enjoined
yes.
nationally by courts because it is utterly inconsistent with the text of Title IX. Indeed, as you know, it completely upends it. It reads Title IX to say that women's sports cease to exist, that a biological man, if he wants to be in a woman's sport, go for it. In a woman's locker room, fine. It's so outrageous that I think almost every court that has considered it has enjoined it.
I agree.
So, okay, I just want to be sure that you're not going to follow the Biden administration's interpretation of Title IX, surely.
No, sir. The Biden administration universally accepted Bostock and arguably exceeded, right? Went even further, I
No,
think.
not arguably.
Than the Bostock opinion. That is not what we did under President Trump's first term, and that is not what we will do under President Trump's second term.
Good. Okay. I want to be crystal clear on this. That I think it's a very dangerous thing to start allowing this into Title IX, which is, it is a landmark statute. It is vitally important, and it has been under attack for 4 very long years, where we have seen women's sports, women's leadership opportunities, women's safety eliminated in many cases. And now, of course, one of the challenges you're going to face is you've got a host of colleges and universities who are openly defying,
Yes.
not just this administration, they're defying court orders. I hear a lot of talk from my friends over here on this side of the dais about the need to follow court orders. We've got a whole bunch of colleges and administrations that are defying court orders and saying, oh, we don't care. We're going to have biological men in women's sports no matter what. We're going to have biological men in women's locker rooms no matter what. Surely you're going to go after that, are you not, and protect the women on campus?
Yes, sir. The current leadership within OCR and Secretary McMahon, as you know, is prioritizing these cases, and that will not stop under my leadership if I'm fortunate enough to assume this role.
Good. And I want to be on the record to back to your regulations, both in 2017 and 2020. I think you might want to rethink those. I mean, in light of subsequent jurisprudence and in light, frankly, of subsequent experience, I think you want to take a really hard look at how you're interpreting gender identity and the interface. We've had there's some water under the bridge now, and the interface with biological sex and just how that's being used to undermine the rights of it's never the rights of men, it's always the rights of women 100% of the time. And I think we've got to be very careful about that.
Thank
My
you.
time has expired, and the chairman, I'm such a good citizen, I never go over. So I'll just submit some questions for the record for you, Dr. Schwinn, and others. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. I think I'm going to focus questions to Dr. Schwinn and Ms. Richey about higher education. And Ms. Richey, I decided to do this. My staff hates it when they give me questions and I end up going a different direction, but you had a wonderful statement in your prepared testimony that I read. Students cannot gain the knowledge or skills they need to be successful in life if they're unable to access educational programs and activities. I completely agree with that. I would ask each of you on that point, helping students gain access to education and educational activities. Do you agree that the Pell Grant program has been a pretty important program?
Yeah, Senator, I'll start. I don't know if I certainly, in my current capacity at the Florida Department of Education, I certainly see the benefits. OCR's involvement in those programs is, fairly limited.
Right.
But I certainly am committed to working with the
Thank
secretary.
you. Dr. Schwinn, how about Pell Grant important?
As a former high school teacher and certainly at every level of education, I think it is important that students, especially low-income students, have access to educational opportunities. At the same time, it is also important that we start to put some restrictions on the skyrocketing cost of higher education.
How about federal work study? That is a way that low-income kids can afford colleges. Federal work study's long-standing program, is that generally a good thing?
I'll go ahead and go first on this one. So I believe that it is important that students have opportunities to earn money as they are in
From your phone? Yeah, I'm just trying to. Gotta find if it'll work. Let's see. You can try. Let's go. And oh my God.
to a federal retirement account. The bill also allows the federal government to make matching contributions for lower-income workers. Mr. Aronowitz, if confirmed, would you commit to working with us to pass the Retirement Savings for Americans Act?
I commit.
Great, you even know it. I love that. Appreciate that. And if confirmed, how do you plan to use your time at EBSA to help retirement become more accessible for more workers, for all workers?
I want to unlock the potential of the employee benefit system, including innovative type of plans like association health plans, ICRAs, and pooled employer plans. I want to work with Congress on anything that will allow independent contractors to have the dignity of retirement savings and health security.
Great, I appreciate that. And I won't ask this question, but Chairman Cassidy and I both, I'm dyslexic. He knows more about dyslexia than I do. But I do think that early literacy is something that we can all agree that it's something that we can make huge progress on. So the administration is trying to cut funding. Terminated, I think, 60, almost 2/3 of the people, at the Institute of Educational Sciences, which administers this assessment. So I just want to urge, you don't have to answer the question, but make sure that we get those resources where they can do good, because this is something we know how to fix. We know how to, we've made so many advances. So anyway, thank you. Yield back.
Thank you, Senator Hickenlooper. Thank you all. Thank you for being here today. For any senator wishing to ask additional questions for the record will be due at 5 p.m. tomorrow, June 6th. The committee stands adjourned.